shoes and food.
We used to have so much church when we was kids.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, Sunday night.
evening. That's right.
And the thing about that Sunday night service, it was what? Like about 4 hours in between? Because we used to be in church 3.5 hours.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
Oh, yeah.
And
Testimony service accounted for a lot of that.
Easily.
So when Dad announced that we weren't having testimony service no more, man, that was one of the
But that was
greatest.
usually held in the evening, right?
Yeah.
The evening
Well,
service.
yeah. It
No,
was-
sometimes it
we
was
had
on
both
Sunday
times.
mornings.
Yeah, Sunday mornings too.
Really?
yeah.
You don't remember the last testimony service we had was on a Sunday morning? Where the one lady got up and said, the devil was telling me he gonna give me $1 million. I said, no, you not devil. You not gonna give me $1 million. And my dad got up and said, all right, that's enough.
Boy, we were so happy
He
when
said
he
that.
said that.
He said we
my
having no
gosh.
more testimony service.
Oh,
but when
my
we used to, in between services, we would have to go to each other's houses to make up for whatever time frame of
Right.
going back to church or whatever, man. So my dad had bought us these new bikes. I had a Huffy. Eddie had this lime green bike. It was one of them BMX bikes.
That white discs.
And back in the day, we didn't know that the projects was the projects.
Yeah.
Joe lived in the projects, but we didn't know that. And I know a lot of times people will be like, oh, the projects, first thing they think is everybody gets killed. It was a community. You had families, etc. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing about the projects that Joe lived in, they had all those speed bumps. So me and Eddie was like, yo, Dad, we want to take our bikes over to Joe's house because we going to ride our bikes. My brother was doing the tricks. And Joe said, Joe, ask your mom, ask Sister Barber, can we come over? And so we went over there. We took our bikes off the back. My dad was like, I'll be back a couple hours. Like, yeah. Man, we got we got on them bikes and we took off riding. And we turned around and we didn't see Joe. We was like, where Joe at? So we turned around. Joe's like, hey, fellas, I can't go past the street, right?
The mailbox.
we had to stay in a little area, a little lot.
I said, no, we got to stay right here. He's like, no, we got. So for 2 hours straight, we rolled around in circles.
Y'all was mad at me, though.
We was tight at you, man. He's like, ask your mama, can we? She's like, no, y'all can't go out there. I was like,
tight.
dang, man, we could have stayed at the crib.
She always said she didn't want us to get hit by cars. So I'm like, them cars not flying through here. Speed bumps.
Man, speed bumps everywhere. The cars was going like 3 miles an hour. We was not getting hit like that.
Those were the exciting times when we all got to get together because a lot of times our parents didn't really let us do a lot and they only trusted a few people.
Yeah.
So Sister Barbara was one of the few people that our parents would let us come over your house and play, man. But even though the church has evolved a lot since then, obviously, it's nothing like it was when we were kids.
Yeah.
I still appreciate we went to a church that was a tight community.
Yeah.
Everybody was like family. Joe, I don't even remember when you came. I don't even remember why you came. We was kids. So how did y'all end up at
I
Faith?
remember because the church we was going to before had closed up and moved out of town. So
They just packed up.
yeah, it seemed like
Up
it.
and left.
It seemed
Did he
like
give you a speech?
Yeah, nothing. It was like,
hey, he didn't need no speech, I guess. So, but anyway, they packed up and moved out of town, and it was asking my mom, did she want to come?
Yeah.
And they was going to Florida, and they was going to move in some tents.
what?
Bro, yeah, and they got to my grandmother, my great grandma actually. They was like, yeah, we're gonna go down to Florida and we're gonna start this church, but God told us to move in these tents.
So they was going to do a tent, like revival type thing until they got.
Hey, I was little, so I don't know. I was just holding my mom's hand, and she was leading the way. And it got around to my great grandma, and she was like, "No, you're not taking my great grandson down there to live in no tent. Are you crazy?" So, long story short, somebody had told us that I think we had knew about the Millers before.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they was like, yeah, go visit the Millers. They got a good church, you know.
Yeah.
They preach good over there, and they teach good. So go over there and visit them. And so we came. I remember the Sunday.
Do you?
I remember the Sunday because when we got there, I know it was small inside there. That's the one off of
That was on Lincoln
Way.
1340. It was
Yeah,
only
yeah.
like it seated like 70. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember going in there, and I remember Bishop was up on the platform preaching, and I remember having to go to the bathroom, and they said the bathroom was
Behind the
behind Pastor Miller. Yeah, we had to walk behind Pastor Miller while he was preaching to go to the restroom.
Yeah.
So my mom was like, just wait. And then they had a Sunday school thing.
Yeah.
So the Sunday school was behind Pastor Miller again,
Yeah.
but downstairs in the basement.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like one light
There's
down
one
there.
light
I
down
remember.
there. Yeah.
And after service, my mom was like, yeah, I kind of like it here. And I remember going outside after service, and your mom was there, and she was saying, hey, this is my son, Eddie. This is Jonathan. And we just love to have y'all, come back next Sunday. And that's when I remember meeting y'all, that Sunday.
Dude,
She
that's
said you were
crazy.
7 and I was 8. and Jonathan was like 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's 3.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I was like, bro, this is what's up.
Man, we've been family. We tell everybody all the time. Joe was the other Miller. Like he been with us for so long, man. I remember.
I'm the only Joe Miller.
That's it.
I'm the only Joe Miller.
Y'all remember
bro.
riding in the back of that green station wagon, man, after
my
church?
God.
Back when we was kids, we used to drive in that little green station wagon. Joe didn't care about nothing but going to McDonald's.
Dude, I told Pastor Miller it was only one time I was mad at you, and he was looking at me like, "What I do?" I said, "Bishop, you used to take us to eat all the time after service."
Yeah, every
said,
time after
yeah.
church we go to McDonald's.
And this one time he had to do something else, I guess, after service, so he couldn't take it. And boy, I was so mad at Pastor Miller because I was hungry. I was a hungry kid. Y'all know I was hungry.
He had a high metabolism. This dude can eat a pot roast by
Hey,
himself.
Joe,
He was
remember
like,
Joe used to trade us our McDonald's toys for French
French
fries?
fries. He's like, I don't care about the toys. Give me your fries.
Yeah, I was like,
fries.
man,
I don't care about the
I want
toys.
even the crunchy ones that be at the bottom of the bag.
Yeah,
I
little
ain't care
ones
the
at the bottom of the
fries.
bag.
I was tearing them up.
So you was tight at dad because he dropped you
I
off?
was mad at Pastor Miller, man. I said, that's the only time I was mad at you, Bishop.
Our church has evolved into what I feel is like a hybrid situation where you have the Pentecostal experience. It's high energy, it's fun, but it's a lot of teaching and word. Man, I never, ever regret like being raised in the environment we were in. Of course, they did a lot of things that were wrong, and they've apologized for it since then. But when I look at these kids that are in church now, a lot of times I don't think they understand how accommodating church is.
Right. I think a lot of it, even what we talked about on some of the other shows, is just getting rid of so many traditions and standards that just don't matter. Yeah. And I think as youth, we suffered a lot. I mean, my siblings forget this, but I snuck in the movies at 17. I was the first one to do it. You know what I'm saying? Batman was the first movie I ever saw.
Yeah.
And after that, I think my parents, it was wrong that I did it at the time, but I think my parents realized that how unimportant that was as far as church and that type of thing and being able to go to dances and all that type of stuff that didn't really have anything to do with religion or anything like that.
Right.
And we eventually were able to open that up. And y'all didn't have to go through a lot of that. And I'm glad, you know what I'm saying? I had to be a little rebellious and I did get in trouble a lot, but it was so that they didn't have to deal with that as well. So, and my parents have apologized. They know. I mean, my parents, the church that they went to, the standards there were crazy.
They was crazy.
You couldn't play sports. You couldn't go to Disney
Couldn't
World.
wear
You
shorts.
couldn't wear shorts. You couldn't do anything. So you really couldn't have a life. So as a kid, you're looking for other outlets because you can't do anything.
I will tell anybody that between the two of you, Eddie especially, you guys kind of were the experimentation because they didn't really know what to do. So they were, no, y'all can't do this, y'all can't do that.
Right.
And
We were the guinea pigs, Joe.
y'all was kind of the guinea pigs because Joe was sneaking out, going skating and doing everything. He was living his best life.
His best life.
I remember when I found out Joe was getting busy. I said, Joe, you been getting busy? Man, Jay, I've been getting them snipper snappers.
them snipper snappers.
I was heartbroken.
Get busy.
Nah, man, I don't. And you know what? Honestly, I don't have an issue with people who do things out of ignorance per se, even though it doesn't mean that it didn't hurt or it didn't cause some measure of damage. As we continue to grow, my major concern is actually presenting ministry that's helping people.
That's right.
That's bringing transition and transformation in their lives. I'm not caught up in the traditional stuff. I know people criticize us all the time. Joe, you're one of the best barbers in the city. You got people coming and talking religion all the time.
Yeah. No, man, I get people that come in all the time saying, what's church like now? Back in the day, they was doing this and that. Is they still taking up offering? Is they still taking the money from the people? What the pastor looking like? What he living like? You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, until you come and experience it on your own,
Right.
you're going to have all these internet pastors, all these things that's happening around you that's going to influence you not to come.
Yeah, that's right. And misconceptions.
Yeah. And I said, you got to come and experience for yourself.
I'm glad you said that, man. I wonder sometimes how many people haven't been in a church in years because of what they experienced as a child.
right.
Right.
So the assumption is church is still the same way it was when I was a kid. And let's be real, there were a lot of toxic church cultures and a lot of poor practices amongst preachers and leaders that hurt people.
Right.
Sitting people down, make them stand up in front of the congregation when they did something wrong. Yeah. Of course, you had crooked preachers that took the money. That stuff happened. My goal is to get people to give church another chance, which is why we do the Shoes and Food podcast, which is why we present an online message, because I might not be able to get you in the building, but I can get you on YouTube. Right. I can get you on Facebook. I can get you on Instagram. And then you become curious to say, well, maybe it's not like that. Even with you working at a barbershop, you get all those people that come in, but they ask you that, like, how long you been in church? Because that's how I know it's on their mind.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are great churches all over this country. I love faith because faith is forever adapting and pivoting, never compromising the Bible.
Right.
But understanding that some stuff wasn't Bible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't Bible at all.
And it's not just, and we talk about this as well. I mean, obviously we provide people with what they need spiritually, but we cover so many other aspects of life.
Yeah.
A lot of your messages apply to people's actual lifestyles that they can take and run with. It's not just spiritual stuff, but we give information on finances. We give information on stewardship and taking care of yourself and health. Yeah. These are things that people actually need outside of church. You can't pray every single thing away.
Right.
No. I mean, if you're super hungry and you got no shirt, guess what? Yeah. You can stand outside in the street and pray, but something has to happen. We have programs where we're able to provide people with shoes and clothes. My Aunt Kay, she does an excellent job. She goes and clothes the homeless and things like that. Yeah. We're able to do that, and we don't want credit for it. We're able to help these people out, man, and we're able to do ministry at such a high level because of all the people that support us.
That's a fact, man. There are so many things that I believe churches are doing now that are positive, but unfortunately because of misrepresentation in times past, we still get a bad rep.
That's right.
And it's important for us to bring light to the fact that, hey, like you would tell the young man, it's not like that anymore. You should try it one more time. You should give it another shot.
Right.
There are those who are traditional and they have their preferences, but we've discussed this. Preference becomes prison if you really aren't going according to the scriptures and what God has called us to do. I always think back, man, on the things that we didn't really think we were listening to. But when you get older, that stuff start coming back up in you, like love your neighbor or you got to forgive, things like that. You know what I'm saying? And it's always been influential and impactful for me. And I guess my desire now as a pastor is to make sure that our culture is healthy enough to whereas people will feel comfortable, but I really want them to understand, man, this is about growing closer to God.
Yes,
like, you know, I know we all grew up, man, well, none of us really close to God per se. You know, Joe, when did you feel like, man, you really knew like, all right, I gotta get closer to God. I gotta change something. What was that like shifting moment in your life?
Because the way we grew up, all that scaring you to God, I was like, no, it got to be something different. And Bishop would always preach about the love of God.
He always preached about the love of God.
The love of God. I said, so why would a God that love us always want to kill us, like all these other preachers say?
Having some fear all the time.
Yeah. I said, now, is that like a dad? Would you be scared of your dad if he always wanted to kill you?
Come on, man.
So God didn't want to kill us. He wanted to love us. So it took me years to come out of that mindset of God wanted to hurt me. He wanted to kill me. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, God really loves me.
Yeah.
You know, he knew me before the foundations of this earth. So it's like, why would he kill me?
Right.
When we go to other churches, you would tune in to what that preacher was saying.
Yeah.
And boy, I remember that one time he took us out of a church. I think we was down south in Indiana somewhere.
Yeah.
And he took
pulled
us
us
out.
out.
He pulled us out. He's like, come on, we got to
My dad
go.
was
Because
like,
the
let's
preacher
go.
was preaching.
What do you say, man? I remember that.
He said,
the Lord will kill you or something.
he will leave you. He said,
oh, he'll leave you.
How was he doing it, Joe?
the Lord will leave you. And boy, I don't care what we was doing, bro. If he said that, we was looking like he will leave us, and we all going to hell.
Yeah.
So he had us down there speaking in tongues. I mean, we was going in, bro. And Pastor Mill was like, come on, let's go. So
You had
why
to
would
come
he
into
hurt
that
me?
realization for yourself.
For
though.
myself.
That's right.
Because I was scared into loving God. And you don't want no scary relationship with a person.
It ain't gonna last.
It's not going to last.
It's
You
not
want
gonna
a
be
loving relationship. So I had to come into my own. And it wasn't until I got grown that I was like, the message about grace.
Yeah.
And God's love, how he loves us. And he died for us. Well, we heard it all of our life, but it was always backed up with,
You going to hell.
you going to hell. He going to
When
kill
we
you.
were little, though, a lot of the messages, and I'm not talking about our church, but like you said,
Yeah, not our church,
we just
but
heard hell and brimstone all the time.
Yeah.
One story, Jay laughed. We was little kids, man, was storming outside really, really bad.
Yeah.
We had just heard one of them hellfire messages. You don't get right, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
It was. I remember that message
I'm
too.
literally in bed, scared to death. All
Yeah.
right, we in this back in the day. We had to share a room. We had twin beds right next to each other. Man, one of them that lightning hit and that thunder hit. I jumped up and ran and got my brother's bed. And said, Jonathan,
the Lord is coming back.
Yeah.
He woke up. He was scared. We was both hovering under the covers like scared.
I
He
was
was asleep
knocked
though.
out.
Like, and I couldn't.
I was knocked out.
He thought he was gonna wake up in hell.
Dog, I woke up. Eddie, he said, Jonathan, wake up. The Lord is coming back.
The Lord, no. The Lord, though, not God or Jesus. The Lord is coming back.
And we
So
both in the bed.
scared. Crying.
But you know what? Dad never really he did every blue moon he would
Yeah.
preach on hell, but not
Yeah.
really.
No.
But we always got it when we would go to them other churches.
Right.
bro.
And we'd be
And then,
scared
like,
to death.
I'm telling you
Yeah.
right now. I remember, no disrespect. No, forget it. It was a UPC church.
Yeah.
And oh, brothers, I'm telling you, women, you got on those dresses, you're gonna burn. Brothers, you got a beard, you're gonna burn. And my dad would be like, son, put your hands down. Come on. But he did. I remember that. He took us out of that church.
I remember.
And we went to dinner or something.
Yeah.
This is what's so crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
He took us all out to dinner. He was like, y'all, that's not the Bible. God's not going to leave you. Joe was scared in the church, but when we started eating, he forgot all about that.
Joe didn't care about none of that. Joe was so happy to get out of there.
That boy was eating them fries. He wasn't thinking about that message.
A meal to do it.
But you know what, man? It's a powerful point
Yeah.
that we have come into the knowledge that the Bible says, with loving kindness have I drawn you. And the only people that get mad at that are people that are legalistic, that haven't been taught that God really does love you.
Right.
Telling people that God loves you shouldn't upset anyone. The reason why people get upset is because they've been indoctrinated to believe otherwise.
That's right.
So they see God, like you said, not as a father, but as a demigod with a lightning bolt, half human, half God. And nah, man, this thing is real. Like when I started to really get it, I said, wait a minute, man, you got to let God work on people.
Yeah.
And he's going to do the work.
Yeah.
And I'm watching individuals' lives change. We got to get back to church community, not just attendance.
Yes.
Take the good. The good was the community. Some of the stuff we did was crazy, but we had some fun. We had the church picnics.
Oh, yeah.
We have to make sure that the church is not just a place where people come, get a word, and go home. It needs to strengthen itself again as a community of support.
That's right.
A community of help. A community where people know I can come in here broken and this is where I'm going to find some help. So I personally am very grateful for the community aspect of it. And I saw so much. I don't think people understand how we were raised in church because they look at us now and they think they're so radical and they're doing this, that, and that. No, it was a traditional environment.
Very traditional. Yeah.
It's hard to believe this, man. Both Joe and Mill were musicians in the church.
Yeah.
Mill played drums and bass. Joe played drums. And I will never forget this, man. This blesses me because we were all raised in church. They don't believe that. They're like, oh, YPJ, he probably got saved and he was in his 20s, came from the street. No, I was raised in the church.
Yes.
But I remember, man, one week, Joe was playing the drums at the time. Mill was on bass. And there was a song that we used to sing in the choir called Until He Comes.
Oh, my God.
And my mom was like, Joe, I want you to lead this song. And Joe was like, man, I don't want to lead the song. So he got up, he got to sing a song. Until he comes, I'll keep on working. Until he comes. He never wanted to sing it, right?
Yeah.
Mill would get off the drums and get off the bass and play drums for that song. And I'll never forget, man. This is us growing up in church. One week, Joe's dad came to church.
The only time I ever got to see your pops.
I never seen Big Fred at church, man. He came one week, and my mom was like, you know what? Joe's dad is here. We're going to let him sing that song. So we just assumed that Joe was going to be mad like any other time. He didn't want to sing. This dude going to grab the mic and take it off the stand and grab the chord. How's everybody doing tonight?
And start adjusting it like he adjusting the chord. Like
How's everybody doing tonight? We came to give God praise. Man, Mill was looking at us like, what? That boy got to sing until he comes. Hey, I keep on working until he comes. At the end, he started looping. I'm going to keep on singing my song, y'all. I'm going to keep on praising the Lord,
We
y'all.
looking at each other like,
what?
Who is this dude? Like, what?
So then at the end of the song, it breaks down. Until he comes, I'll keep on working until he comes. Joe said, hold on a second. Until he comes.
I hate y'all.
I keep on working. Then he did a Luther Vandross. He said, and then hey, this took the cake. Then he started crying. He said,
That's when I was like about to get off the drums. I was like, hold on a second, you performing is one thing. You ain't about to cry.
but
Like,
then,
you ain't about to fake cry.
but Bill, remember mom grabbed the mic and said, some of y'all think Joe is only doing this because his dad's here. We was like, oh yeah.
That's why. That's
exactly
That's the only reason why he's doing this. Is because his dad is here.
Man, that's a classic.
And as soon as he got done
I
singing,
hate
he
Joe.
wiped them tears out his
It
eyes.
went
and was
right
like,
back to normal.
I said, that boy faking the Holy Ghost like a mug. His dad was like, yeah, son. I said, your son's a fraud.
Shoes and food.